Jodie Foster was never just another Hollywood prodigy. She was its paradox. A child star who outgrew stardom without losing her grip on it, a Yale graduate fluent in French and fame, and an actress who walked away from the spotlight at her peak just to wrestle it on her own terms. She earned her first Oscar nomination at 14 for her haunting role in Taxi Driver, stunned critics with The Accused in 1988, and became immortalized as Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs, winning her second Academy Award before the age of 30. But for all her accolades, it was her privacy that became legend. Foster kept her personal life under such tight control that when she finally came out in 2013, the Golden Globes audience sat frozen, not in judgment, but in awe of just how little they'd ever known. Behind that mystique, though, was a woman constantly reinventing herself. Actor, director, producer, mother. And motherhood, for Jodie Foster, wasn't a side note. It was her anchor, her rebellion, and her most guarded achievement. This is the story of what happened to her kids, beginning with her firstborn, the son who inherited both her brilliance and her need to disappear before he could be seen. Charles Charlie Bernard Foster was born on July 20th, 1998, into a fortress of intentional silence. Foster, then 35, was entering her directorial era after decades of stardom. She had just starred in Contact, was producing her own projects, and had made the bold choice to become a mother on her terms, without a public partner, without a name on the birth certificate, and without an explanation. Speculation swirled. A crew member? A friend? A famous donor? Jodie never flinched. "They're my children. No one else's," she told those close to her. From the beginning, Charlie lived in the eye of a storm that never touched him. He was shielded not just from paparazzi, but from the idea of fame itself. At home, there were no posters of his mother's films, no red carpet rituals, no bedtime stories about Hollywood. Foster crafted an environment of books, quiet, and academic rigor, as if raising her son was an intellectual experiment in emotional normalcy. Charlie's earliest years were shaped by a contradiction: total privacy inside a family that couldn't escape attention. While other celebrity kids were dressed up for magazine spreads, Charlie was wearing hand-me-downs and learning chess. Foster banned social media and avoided taking him to industry events. He once told a family friend he thought his mother was in construction after seeing her repeatedly in hard hats on set. It was funny, but it wasn't a joke. Jodie Foster had worked so hard to keep her sons out of the machine that they didn't even know it was there. But that illusion began to crack when Charlie was a teenager. Around 15, he started noticing the gap between his life and the headlines. That was also the year his mother's Golden Globe speech, the one where she publicly acknowledged her sexuality, went viral. For the world, it was a watershed moment. For Charlie, it was a line in the sand. Suddenly, people were whispering at school. Overnight, he became the son of the most famously private lesbian in America. And while Jodie returned to her quiet rhythms, Charlie found himself facing a paradox she knew too well: being known without being seen. It was around that time that Charlie began flirting with the idea of acting. Not publicly, not with an agent. Just workshops, student productions, summer intensives. He wasn't chasing the spotlight. He was trying to understand it. At 18, he enrolled at Yale, like his mother, studying theater and performance studies. Away from Los Angeles, away from the Foster legacy, Charlie found something rare: space to think. He dove into narrative theory, character construction, and silent film structure. Professors noted his discipline, his obsession with tone and timing, and his refusal to reference his famous mother. And when asked directly about her, he once shrugged and said, "She's a good listener." That deflection wasn't distance. It was reverence. He didn't want to be Jodie Foster's son. He wanted to be someone she could be proud of without footnotes. Now in his mid-20s, Charlie is finally stepping into the public eye. Not with a bang, but with surgical precision. In 2025, he appeared as Jodie's guest at the SAG Awards, towering beside her in a quiet show of solidarity. No interviews, no Instagram post, just presence. Insiders confirm he's writing and directing his first independent feature, a low-budget, emotionally dense character study with no celebrities attached. He's refused studio meetings, turned down two name-dangling streaming offers. His only request, full creative control. It's a move straight from his mother's playbook. But here's the twist. Even as he builds his own voice, Charlie still won't answer the question everyone's been asking for 26 years. Who's his father? He's been asked. He's declined. Not because he's hiding something, but because he believes, like his mother once told him, that's not your story to give away. In an industry that thrives on revelation, Charlie Foster is choosing silence. And in doing so, he may be the loudest echo of Jodie's legacy yet. If Charlie was born into the silence Jodie Foster engineered, then his younger brother Christopher Kit Bernard Foster was raised entirely within its blueprint. Born on September 29, 2001, Kit entered a world already designed for protection. By then, Jodie had shifted from leading roles to producing and directing, carefully curating her public image while locking down her private one. The media didn't even know Kit's name until years later, and photos of him were so rare that fan forums debated whether he existed at all. But he did, quietly, deliberately, and with a temperament that would make him the most elusive of the Foster lineage. From the beginning, Kit was the sensitive one. While Charlie began to explore storytelling and theater, Kit preferred puzzles, microscopes, and silence. He rarely spoke to strangers, disliked noise, and would often retreat into books about astronomy or marine life. According to a family friend, he once corrected a houseguest's explanation of bioluminescence. At age 7, he wasn't precocious in the performative sense. He was cerebral, even secretive, like a scientist raised in a monastery. And Jodie, ever the architect of boundaries, knew better than to push. He doesn't like crowds, she told a director who'd suggested bringing the kids to set. And I don't like explaining my son to strangers. As Kit grew, his instincts only sharpened. He avoided cameras entirely, to the point that family trips were rarely documented. Foster once said Kit refused to pose for holiday photos unless he was allowed to blur his own face. While some assumed he was shy, those close to him insisted otherwise. Kit wasn't afraid of being seen. He simply rejected the idea that he owed the world anything. And in a family that had fought to keep fame at bay, that attitude was almost heroic. But it came with costs. By high school, Kit was acutely aware of who his mother was. Not just an actress, but a cultural icon whose legacy carried weight in every room they entered. Teachers whispered, classmates asked invasive questions. Some assumed Kit would follow Charlie to Yale or at least dip a toe into the arts. He did neither. Instead, he pursued chemistry, math, and biophysics, applying to a short list of research-heavy universities. When he got into Princeton, it wasn't announced in a magazine or leaked through a rep. Jodie told only a handful of friends. He did this himself, she reportedly said. He wants no part of my world. And he meant it. At Princeton, Kit kept a low profile, choosing lab work over parties and publishing in academic circles under a slightly altered name. Even classmates didn't connect him to Jodie Foster until much later. And when they did, Kit reportedly shrugged it off. She's cool. I'm not. But even Kit couldn't entirely escape the spotlight. In 2024, he graduated with honors in molecular biology, quietly accepted a summer fellowship in Copenhagen, and returned to LA only once, to attend the 2025 Breakthrough Prize ceremony with his mother. It was the first time in years the public saw him, and the transformation was striking. No longer the reclusive boy hiding behind a hoodie, Kit walked the carpet in a tailored suit with gold hoop earrings, a subtle rebellion against the monastic image he had cultivated. The press buzzed with headlines. Jodie Foster's mysterious younger son steals the spotlight. He didn't grant interviews. He didn't post online. But for those paying attention, it was a message. Kit wasn't vanishing. He was evolving. And perhaps most surprising, Jodie herself opened up slightly, telling the Sun that Kit was the most emotionally intuitive person I've ever known. She didn't mention science, awards, or colleges, just empathy And that said everything. Still, the most shocking detail about Kit may be what never made the headlines. He never saw the Silence of the Lambs until he was 21. He watched it alone, in his Princeton dorm, out of curiosity, not loyalty, and when a roommate asked what it felt like to see his mother in one of the most iconic roles in film history, Kit allegedly replied, "It's good, but I like the documentaries she produced more." That answer was classic Kit, precise, disarming, and just a little defiant. He wasn't interested in legacy, he was interested in truth. And while his path may never lead him to Hollywood, he remains one of its most fascinating enigmas. A young man born into fame who chose science over spectacle, privacy over profile, and purpose over performance. Today, Kit Foster lives mostly off the grid, dividing time between labs, research fellowships, and quiet travels. He has no known social media, no press agent, no published interviews. But ask anyone who knows Jodie Foster what she's proudest of, and they'll all say the same name. Not Charlie, not Clarice, not even her Oscars. They'll say Kit. Because in a world built on image, he chose substance. And in doing so, he became the rarest kind of Hollywood child. The one who walked away without resentment, without noise, and without needing to be seen to be extraordinary. If Charlie was the quiet observer who chose to re-enter the story, and Kit the escape artist who rewrote its rules, then the final chapter of Jodie Foster's motherhood belongs not to another son, but to what she built around them both. There is no third child in this story. Instead, there's a legacy, one that stretches beyond red carpets and resumes into the textured space where identity, secrecy, and maternal love collide. Jodie Foster didn't just raise two boys. She raised a question. What does it mean to grow up under the glow of a name that refuses to shine on you? The tension has followed both Charlie and Kit through every stage of their lives, manifesting in subtle rebellions, invisible walls, and a shared philosophy that fame is something to be negotiated, not inherited. But even with their stark differences, the brothers remain remarkably close. According to sources within their Yale and Princeton circles, Charlie often visited Kit during undergrad breaks, preferring to crash on his dorm floor than book hotels. They shared meals, coded jokes, and long walks that had nothing to do with their mother. In a family where everything was carefully protected, their bond became the most natural thing of all. As adults, they continue to mirror the quiet defiance Foster herself mastered. Charlie, now navigating the early trenches of independent filmmaking, insists on anonymity for his collaborators, refusing to exploit connections for attention. Kit, immersed in biotechnical research, avoids conferences where press might attend, and both still maintain an unspoken pact. No interviews, no memoirs, no brand building. They have stories, yes, but not for sale. That restraint, especially in an era where most celebrity offspring turn their last names into careers, is almost radical, and it didn't come from nowhere. Jodie, whose own childhood was consumed by the industry, made an early vow. Her kids would never be treated like content. When asked in a rare 2021 interview if her sons would ever enter the business, she smiled and said, "If they do, they'll be better than me, because they got to choose." That word, choose, has become the silent anthem of the Foster family. Charlie chose to create, Kit chose to escape, and Jodie chose to love them both without molding them into anyone but themselves. Still, there are moments when the wall flickers. In early 2025, when Charlie escorted his mother to the SAG Awards and Kit briefly appeared at the Breakthrough Prize ceremony, a single photo of the brothers standing side by side surfaced on Reddit. It was blurry, taken from across the room, but within hours it had thousands of comments, not because they were doing anything performative, but because in that moment they looked like exactly what they are, two adult men, quietly magnificent, shaped not by fame, but by the careful absence of it. For fans of Jodie Foster, it was a glimpse into the private life they'd never been allowed to see. For everyone else, it was a reminder that Hollywood's most compelling stories don't always happen in front of the camera. Today, Charlie continues to write, currently deep in post-production on his first feature film, a quiet drama about grief, childhood, and memory. Insiders say it's semi-autobiographical, but told through the lens of a fictional family. Kit, meanwhile, is part of an international research initiative developing environmentally sustainable synthetic enzymes, work he's reportedly passionate about but declines to publicize. And Jodie, she's returned to acting in small, potent doses, most recently earning critical acclaim in True Detective, Night Country. In interviews, she rarely mentions her kids, not out of distance, but out of reverence. As one close friend put it, she gave the world her work. She kept her sons for herself, but in moments of candor, Jodie has dropped hints. She said Charlie challenges her intellectually, that Kit has taught her to listen more, and that both made her believe in something stronger than legacy, continuity. If you found this breakdown powerful and want more deep dives into the hidden lives of Hollywood's forgotten children, subscribe to our channel. Your support brings these invisible stories to light. Thanks for listening.